Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, cranking up the live stream on a Monday evening at 6 o'clock Eastern time. And you're going to see this much more frequently here on my channel over the next several months and beyond. This is the approach we're going to take to involve you more frequently with the live chat engagement. And obviously, we bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry, including one of our big headliners here, Cam Underwood from State of the U, one of the originals. So, Cam, we appreciate it, man. How you doing tonight?
Hey, good time. Thanks for having me. First time, long time. Just want to call in and everything. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, that is the standard standard line out of the first time radio callers. So hopefully we've got some of those coming on the line for the first time and catching us for the first time. So we shall see how this plays out. But we always get so much response. You're one of the big catalysts for this idea, actually, because I get so many comments and responses. I can't keep up with them and can't convey them and transfer them to Cam enough in terms of the comments that I get on the videos that we post talking Miami football. So, Cam, of course, we had the spring game on Saturday night. I did my best to cover it and get as much wrap up on it as possible. But the folks that watch my channel definitely want to hear from you. And I'll just get your initial thoughts. And then I'm sure I'm going to have a ton of questions to go on from there.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be some questions and everything. So let me not do the fake radio voice with my actual voice now. Our spring game for Miami Hurricanes was actually not last Saturday, but the Saturday previous on the 14th. But the final spring scrimmage was on the 21st, and that's because there was an extra week of practice, and Hard Rock Stadium was unavailable on the 21st because they had booked already another event. Anyways, it was, a glorified scrimmage. There were some positives and some negatives, as happened with any kind of, scrimmage or practice or whatever you want to call it, situation. So, some young guys really stood out. Gilbert Frierson had a strong day. 3 tackles, a sack, and an interception on the last second heave at the end of the first half. Brian Hightower, another freshman, had 5 catches for 100 and 2 touchdowns. Both touchdowns that were scored in the game. Had a nice diving catch on a 50-yard bomb from N'Kosi Perry in that game. Speaking of N'Kosi Perry, he was okay. He started 0 for 6 and then kind of got it going from there. But even in the 0 for 6 start, there were some drop passes and things like that. Even after that game and everything, we saw the same Malik Rozier we've been seeing, and we all know, or you should know by now, that I am not a big Malik Rozier fan. I suffer him because that's who was there. He was really the only college level player last year because N'Kosi Perry came in the summer, not early, so he really wasn't able to push for that job. But from all accounts, it seems as though Rozier is going to start again to start this season. I am nonplussed by that. I am not excited by that. But sometimes discretion is the better part of valor, and I don't agree with that because I just don't think that he's going to be any better or different. Because every report that I've seen, every journalist who covers practice, who's been there, all the videos that have come out, and then with my own 2 eyes, he's the same guy that he's always been. He'll make some really good plays, and I appreciate those, but there's also going to be the missed reads in the run game. There's also going to be the ground balls in the pass game, ground balls, which are not good in football. No, you don't want to throw those. So, the defensive line was really strong, which was good to see, especially because of the guys that we lost up front. Either to graduation or to, one guy was very talented to a transfer, but seeing the new talent up front being very good was very comforting for me. True freshman Gregory Rousseau is 6'7", and he's up to 225, but he played at about 200 pounds in high school. He played mostly safety in high school, which is crazy because when you see this guy, his arms longer than a pterodactyl, but he's putting on the weight very quickly. He had 9 sacks in 3 scrimmages. So he had 4, 3, and 2, I want to say. He's pretty much the single reason why the offensive line shuffled the lineup after the first scrimmage because they couldn't block him. And he's very physical and everything. He's a specimen and he's going to be very, very good, but he was a high school safety. and wide receiver. Like, he played a little DN when they said, okay, go get the quarterback, but he's really learning the position, and you can't block him. Yeah, we need to figure this out. So that would be one of the negatives, the offensive line, because that just needs to get better. Obviously, if you're giving up, 9 sacks collectively in the spring game, I think they did on the 14th. So, yeah, that was a negative. Tight end was just not really that good because the best tight ends on this roster are still in high school, in Brevin Jordan and Will Mallory. And so that was a thing that needs improvement. The cornerback position, that was actually pretty good with DJ Ivey and Gilbert Frierson, who I already mentioned, playing very well. Trajan Bandy stepping up into a starting role. I would like to see Javonte Dean put it together because he was, the #1 ranked corner coming out of JUCO last year. 6'2.5", runs a legit 4.3. Like, everybody, to a man, they'll say, look, 6, he's the fastest corner we have. And Mike Rumpf, the cornerback coach, said, I'm not sure what he does well. Like, what's his thing? And I think he needs to figure that out. And when you've been here for a full year and through a full football season and were this highly touted of a kid as you come through the JUCO ranks and make all kinds of plays on your highlight film, you do all that in JUCO, but you don't really do it here. That's a little troubling, but I think this is it's a blessing in disguise, because if we're recruiting over him and he has this kind of talent, even if his production doesn't match that, and we're recruiting over him, that's what Miami should be doing. Like, you don't get a job just because you've been here longer. So if we have DJ Ivey and Gilbert Frierson and Al Blaze Jr., who's coming after he graduates, and Trajan Bandy and whoever else to recruit over him, then that's a good thing. So kind of a negative and a positive. Lastly, I know I kind of went on a meandering soliloquy here, but the run game in the spring game last week was not the greatest, but that's kind of part and parcel going with the offensive line, because when you have a talented stable of running backs like Miami does, even without a couple guys who have not enrolled yet, but you have Travis Homer and DJ Dallas and Lorenzo Lingard, who's going to be awesome, and Robert Burns, who had, again, this is 5 years ago now, but he had the highest Spark rating at a Nike training camp in the history of those ratings at that time as a high school sophomore. And he's been injured since then for 3 or 4 years. His junior year of high school he didn't play. Senior year of high school he really didn't play. He redshirted here his last year because he got hit in a scrimmage and he separated his shoulder and didn't play. So, we're 5 years removed from seeing this kid as a sophomore on the field. And he actually kind of looks good at 225 pounds with some wiggle and some power. If he is not, a porcelain doll out there and he's able to contribute, that adds. And then we don't even have Cameron Davis from Carroll City, who's still in high school, or Relis George, who looks as old as I do. And I'm not a spring chicken, but this 18-year-old kid looks as old as me, and he's coming in to play fullback. So Miami has a loaded running back room, but it's tough to get running room when, you get a handoff and you're 2 yards in backfield and there's a whole bunch of opposite color defensive jerseys there. So that's kind of my whirlwind tour of the quarterback position. Oh, sorry, of the team. And I want to say about the quarterback position, I did not mention Jaren Williams, who was a true freshman early enrollee. He came in and played well. You could see that the game was a little bit too fast for him at some times, where he would look to throw and he kind of, he cocked the arm and say, oh, wait, whoa, there's a guy there I didn't expect to be there. But when the game slows down for him, ooh, boy, I don't know if it's going to be this year, but if I'm looking forward to the quarterback battle in 2019 with N'Kosi Perry, Jaren Williams, and whoever we recruit at that position this year, and then also a Cade Weldon, who has some talent, even if he's not as talented as the other guys, it could be interesting. It could be interesting.
We've got some serious Miami football talk here with Cam Underwood. We fired up the live stream on a Monday night, 6 o'clock Eastern time. If you're catching us for the first time, my name's Mark Rogers TV. We cover college football like nobody else, coast to coast, and Cam is definitely one of our headliners. Please join him and the rest of the staff there at State of the U on Miami sports coverage. We've got all sorts of people commenting, Cam, that not necessarily Robert Burns fans think that his time has come and gone, that he hasn't really shown up here because of the injuries and he needs to move on.
I see where they're coming from, because, again, he was a high school sophomore the last time that he did anything noteworthy on the football field. But a kid who flashes the kind of talent that he did, even through the injuries as a junior, when he played more than he did as a senior. Because as a senior, he had 9 carries and 1 kickoff return. He played a little bit more than that as a junior, but still he's been fighting injuries for a long time. But the talent is there. And if he can stay healthy, I think that he can be a contributor on this team. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be the A1 number 1 running back like I once did, but a kid at 5'10", 225 of rock solid muscle. And after the player and coaches interviews in the bowels of the stadium, we're walking back, me and a couple other couple of journalist friends of mine and I, walking back to go to the elevator to go up to the press box. And he comes walking by with a couple other players. And man, Robert Burns is like, he's a bowling ball, just rock solid muscle, bro. Like he's well built, you know. And if he can be healthy, I think that he can contribute on this team. Because he's going to get carries before Chalk Gray. I would even say that I might give him carries in front of Cam Davis as the number 4 running back. Then you can redshirt Cam Davis and stagger him and Lingard for a year because you're only going to take 1 running back in the 2020 class, and you bring in 2 this year, but then you can redshirt one of them. So you're still stacking players, but I'm not kicking a kid with that kind of physical ability off the team. I'm just going to hope that he can be healthy enough so that we can see it. But I think that there's a potential that Robert Burns can be not an impact player, but a contributing player.
All right. This is for 19 Texas or 19 Savage. Yeah, I got my Texas notes right there. He's the only one making Texas comments constantly. 19 Savage wants me to do Texas so badly. And yes, Texas is important. I will get to Texas as much as I possibly can.
Yeah,
Talk to Miami tonight with Cam Underwood, State of the U. All right. Dedrick Tatum. And as you can imagine, Cam, a lot of people are high on Hightower. So the worst thing you can be is a spring game MVP. And that's the best accomplishment that you can put on your resume at the end of your college career. Is this guy legit?
Brian Hightower is super legit. He had 80-something catches for almost 1,400 yards and 22 touchdowns as a high school sophomore in California before he transferred to IMG Academy in Florida, you know, which is a football powerhouse factory kind of thing. So his numbers suffered, but he has that kind of talent. And we've seen that over the course of many years. You can look up Brian Hightower's highlights from when he was at Calabasas as a sophomore, those numbers and videos if you're watching and interested in seeing that. But no, he's not a flash in the pan, not just, okay, well, I came out and had a really good spring game. Like he got open, he stacked defenders, he made a diving catch with DJ Ivy all on top of him, not in pass interference mode, but like a tightly contested catch. He got separation, he won a couple jump balls in the red zone. One of them I thought might have been offensive pass interference, but, you know, we'll just keep that between you and me and people watching. But he has all kinds of talent. And he might not be that guy this year, obviously, because you have Lawrence Cager in front of him. You also have Amon Richards, who's coming back off of a knee injury sustained last year and things like that. So there's other older players on, you know, the outside at those positions, whichever one you want to call it, the X or the Z, the flank or the split end, wherever he's going to play, whichever one of those. There's other guys in front of him. Dale Harris is another guy. Jeff Thomas is another guy, even though he's only 5'9", who plays both inside and outside on offense. So Brian Hightower is not going to be the number 1 option, but he has number 1 option talent. And we saw that flash at the spring game. So it might be a while until he does 5 catches for 102 touchdowns in a, you know, interscholastic game, like against other competition. But the future is very, very bright. That's a name you should know.
So we try not to blow out the spring game too much in regards to emphasizing, you know, so-and-so played well, so-and-so didn't. It's a glorified scrimmage. There's people there in the stadium and there's a television audience of some sort, depending on the school. So it gets more attention and gets magnified versus there are typically 3 to 4 other scrimmages that are just as important to the coaching staff and evaluating talent and players. So based on everything you can gather from the spring game, from the other scrimmages, from everything that came out of camp, I know you really can't see anything firsthand for the most part being at the practices, but is there anything you know about this team today that you didn't necessarily know a few weeks ago, good or bad?
Yeah, first, I'm just going to start up front on both sides of the ball. The defensive line is way better than I thought they were going to be. Gerald Willis III, who was a 5-star recruit a few years ago, making his return after taking a year of personal absence for some personal issues. Last year, he's the #1 player at defensive tackle. He was the leadership award on defense for the spring. Seems to have gotten his personal issues together, whatever they were. Seems to have gotten really focused and dedicated on the field. Again, he was, and we spoke about this before, this is the second year last year that he was Scout Team Defensive Player of the Year, because he was unblockable when you have, Scout Team defensive linemen going up against a guy who could challenge for first team All ACC, because he has that kind of talent and ability and skill. So adding him to the mix, seeing the progression of guys like a Pat Bethel, like a Tyreek Martin, which is a name that, we got him 3 years ago when Craig Kuligowski came over because he was committed to Missouri, and then he wanted to follow Coach Cool here. Have not really seen hide nor hair of him since, but he flashed in the spring game and made a couple plays. Okay. Obviously, the cyborg, Joe Jackson, enjoy him for his third and final year now, because he's going to be a first-round draft pick next year. So, put up 8.5, 10 sacks or so, be pretty much unblockable and then leave. Also at the other end, Jonathan Garvin, very good. Greg Rousseau, I already mentioned. Scott Patchin, who's been battling some knee injuries and things in his time here. He's another big 6'6", 255-pound defensive end, finding his way into the rotation, making plays. So seeing the defensive line play to the level that they did, and shout out to our new defensive line coach, Jess Simpson, by the way, legendary high school coach from Buford, Georgia, worked in college at Georgia Southern for a year, worked for the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL for a year before coming down to do this job here. So he's obviously paying dividends already, being a very good coach. And I'm not going to demean Coach Cool just because he left, but I have not seen so far that there's been a large drop-off, if any drop-off at all, of defensive line coaching based upon their performance. So that was really encouraging. On the other side of the ball, the offensive line just obviously needs work, just tons and tons of work. Navon Donaldson, who was a freshman All-American at guard, he's bumping out to right tackle now. And he wanted to play tackle in high school because he's 6'6", 380-ish, whatever. So he has to reshape his body to get it down to, maybe the 350, 345 range a little bit, because you're able to be a little bit heavier at guard. And that's something that Mark Richt mentioned when he was talking about moving him out to tackle. But in that, he was already a freshman All-American, and he's now playing the position that he wants to play. I think that Donaldson at right tackle is going to be an added bonus. You have Tyreek St. Louis at left tackle. And then, we have a lot of guard types on the offensive line, so interior linemen. So now we can have the best interior linemen with our two best tackle prospects. And those 5 need to work together all summer. So I know it's St. Louis at left tackle. I think Jahair Jones at left guard, Tyler Gauthier at center, Hayden Mahoney at right guard, and then Navon Donaldson at right tackle. Those 5 need to just everything. They need to eat, sleep, be at the gym doing their cardio, their lifting, head out to the field to mock through all of their walkthroughs for their protection calls, bring the defensive line out there, because the defensive line, they want to get some work in. So, hey, you guys run whatever it is that you guys run. So bull rush, twist, slant, I don't care. TE stunts, whatever it is, but they need to see everything and just be together. So obviously really want to see that to be improved. So yeah, and I won't say that tight end was really a disappointment just because I didn't have high expectations, just because I think that there's a dearth of talent at that position currently, which is why we brought in 2 guys in this signing class and are working to bring in 2 more in the next signing class, because the talent that we've lost over the last 4 years, Clive Walford to the NFL, then after that, David Njoku to the NFL. After that, then now Chris Herndon to the NFL. So you have multiple NFL players, but some of the guys we brought in to replace them either didn't pan out, like a Michael Irvin II, or like a Giovanni Haskins, they ended up transferring and going elsewhere. So we just don't have the talent at that position that you would like to see. So yeah, I would say that those kind of along the lines, tight end and offensive line, things that maybe are not where we want them or need them to be a really top tier competing team, but defensive line was better than I thought it was going to be. And also cornerback, also outside. I think that the young kids coming in, Frierson and Ivy, they're really going to be able to play a big role. and then you're able to mix and match to get your best defenders out there. Gervin Hall, shout out to him. He's a true freshman, early enrollee. Also, he was making all kinds of ridiculous plays. Then he kind of tweaked a knee, so he was out for the second and third weeks, or the last 2/3, I should say, of spring practice. But yeah, all those guys who are coming in on the defensive secondary, I think they're playing really well. So that was good to see. Yeah, but defensive line better, offensive line worse than I thought, but that's where we are.
This is what I love about the personnel breakdowns with you, Cam, is, and I've said this before, is I want to know as much personnel as I can for the best programs in the country, really as much as any of the Power Fives in the country, but especially the elite teams. And it seems like the first time I turn on Miami every year, and it's usually the first big game. Last year it would have been probably Florida State. This year it's going to be LSU right out of the gate. I see a ton of guys on the field that I already know, but then I see a guy make a play and jump out, and I think, yeah, Cam talked about him in the recruiting class like a year and a half ago, and now he's getting to see playing time, and he made a play right there, and I already know about this guy, and I already know the scouting report, where he's from. So it's really good stuff there. So we got a number of people, Cam, on the line, Merck City and others, asking about the striker position. Better option with Derek Smith or Romeo Finley instead of having McLeod as the third linebacker.
I think that we're going to see both. And striker is a new kind of Sam. It's a hybrid safety outside linebacker position. Now, it kind of came out of necessity because Zach McLeod hurt his wrist and he was out for all of spring practice. He was not allowed to have contact with that wrist. So we kind of went in and said, okay, if we're facing spread teams and things like that, how can we combat that in a positive way? Because honestly, Zach McLeod got lost in coverage a lot last year. And I hate to say that because he's one of my favorite players on the team. He has been ever since I saw his junior highlights at Santa Lucia's High School. Shout out to Santa Lucia's. Vince Wilfork, also from the same school, by the way. But yeah, he just hasn't always been that level of player. So yeah, you're looking with bringing in the striker position. So you have those two former safeties who are cross-training at striker now. So you have Derek Smith, number 25, and Romeo Finley, number 30, sophomore and junior respectively, out there at that position. I think that it will be a better option having the striker out there. So you have you have Mike Pinckney and Shaq Quarterman as your two inside backers, if you will. And then you have your striker position with Derek Smith is the number one at that position right now by all reports. So you're talking about having 55, 56, and then 25 at striker being the three guys out there with McLeod being on the sideline. Against certain teams, that is going to be advantageous, obviously. You're going to have a little bit better coverage, well, a lot better coverage ability because hopefully those guys who have played safety have that ability. And Derek Smith, even though I didn't think that he was going to do a great job and kept calling it a mismatch, he actually played Hunter Renfrow pretty well in the slot in the ACC championship game. And even a couple other games when he came in for injured Trajan Bandy to play the slot position. And I didn't, from his time in high school, I did not believe that he had that skill set, but he proved me wrong on the field, and I'm willing to admit that. So adding that kind of coverage ability with either him or Finley, who was another safety, both of those guys, 4-star recruits, I think that will be a thing that is going to be advantageous. I think they will also be able to get forward in the blitz game and the run game if you have that kind of read option, outside zone type thing where they're coming his way and they're able to come downfield and set that edge and maybe even blow up a play. I think that'll be good, but I also expect to see Zach McLeod out there for a substantial number of snaps. But in certain situations, I think the striker position is going to be a real advantage.
Kim Underwood, State of the U. Best Miami football coverage in sports overall, with the baseball season obviously in full swing.
Oh, don't remind me.
Oh, it's not going well.
I mean, you see me taking a drink right there after you mention it. So it's I think we're 6 games under 500 right now. Might miss the ACC tournament, might miss the NCAA tournament for the second time in a row after not having missed it in 44 years. So yeah, everything is. But the last game we played on Sunday, the pitcher did throw a complete game shutout. So shout out to you. Miami
baseball is 6 games under 500.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I agree.
Is this like an aberration, just a little dip? The roster's not set right, or is this a sign?
It's been kind of systemic. Like you had top tier talent that kind of covered up some of the deficiencies over previous years. You have guys who are in the minors and doing very, very well now. Willie Abreu, who had like 50 steals last year in the minor leagues. I didn't think he was that kind of speedster. Zach Collins was a first-round pick, number 10 overall. You have other guys who are gone, and you always lose guys to the NFL draft or the Major League Baseball draft if you're Miami. But you always also have Floridians who play baseball all year round and are specialists at this. So you bring in very talented guys, even by losing your top-end talent. But the guys that we've brought in have not met the standard. Even for the recruits that have been there. So, yeah, it's pretty bad. And it cycles through what's wrong. So sometimes it's pitching, other times it's hitting, other times it's errors, and then it's base running. And then it's not one thing that we address and fix. It's like everything breaks down. It's like when I had my Mustang, and shout out to Ford because it was always in the shop with something new because I get one thing fixed and then another thing and another thing. That's kind of what's going on with Miami baseball. And it really sucks because I love that program, but they're not really good right now.
And this comes like 2 years after a World Series appearance, right?
2 consecutive College World Series appearances, by the way. But yeah, how quickly and how far the once mighty have fallen with Miami baseball.
All right. Cam Underwood, State of the U. So if you want to talk baseball, you can jump on his Twitter feed as well and talk up some baseball. And he loves the basketball team as well. They're at Miami coming off an NCAA appearance. Please, if I interrupt Cam from time to time with my cough, please excuse me. But please also subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is the only place I see out there that we bring on the best bloggers and broadcasters and writers in the industry. 97 in 2017, and the meter is going up and up and up and up. But this is one of the originals here, Cam Underwood, State of the U. Please join him and the rest of the staff right there. So people are clamoring about the offensive coordinator or lack thereof at this point. Does the program need one?
I mean, they're not going to. Need is a relative term. And Miami is always a top 5, top 10 team in yards per play. Because we always have the athletes, and we're stacked at skill positions. If you go and look on the website, I did a breakdown a while ago talking about how the roster lines up with the blue chip ratio of having more than or as many 4-star and 5-star recruits as possible at every position. The offensive skill positions are loaded. I mean, running back, fullback, tight end with the new coming guys, wide receiver. I think there's 8 or 9 blue chip wide receivers out there. I mean, there's going to be that. So I think the production is going to be there. Obviously, in the red zone and on third down, there needs to be improvement. And that's an area where Mark Richt knows and he can improve as a play caller. I'm torn between wanting an offensive coordinator who calls plays and needing one. Because I don't know where that person's going to coach. Because we have all 10 assistant coaches already. And we just run down on the offensive side of the ball. Your offensive line coach is not going to be your play caller. So Stacey Searles, you're not going to trade that out just to trade that out. Your tight ends coach, probably not going to be your play caller. And Todd Hartley is one of the best recruiters in America, has locked down Jacksonville/Duval County. No, so that's it. Wide receivers coach might be your passing game coordinator. Oh, and that's what Ron Dugans is, but he's not going to call plays. So you give him the title, you pay him his extra money, he sticks around. Cool. That brings you to running back and quarterback coach. Our quarterback coach is John Richt, i.e. son of Mark Richt. I have long held that there could be an upgrade to that position. He's not firing his son. That brings us to Thomas Brown, the youngest, or into the last 2 years, he was the youngest offensive coordinator in football, and he's the running backs coach. You know, Thomas Brown, who went to Georgia and played in the league. So he's the named offensive coordinator. But are you going to get rid of him? And he's a great running backs coach, and he recruited a 4-star and a 5-star this year and has a 4-star with likely another 4-star coming behind that next year. And he recruited the starter 4-star. Actually, he's recruited 6 guys in the last 3 years. You have DJ Dallas, who's a 4-star. You have Travis Homer, who was a 4-star. Lorenzo Lingard was a 5-star. Cam Davis is a 5-star. Marcus Crowley from Jacksonville, who's going to be a 4-star. And probably RJ McIntosh's little brother, I forget his first name now. Whatever. The McIntosh kid who's at university school. Y'all know, I know you're in the comments saying, oh, how did you forget his name? Because I did. Whatever. But that's 6 guys in 3 years who are 4-star and 5-star guys. You're not going to get rid of him. So where are you going to go again? And you know that he's not going to fire his son at quarterback coach. And Mark Richt also is hands-on with the quarterback room. I just don't see room for that. So I will just say I would like to see improvement on the production on the field. And some of that goes with wide receiver. Excuse me. Some of that goes with tight end. Some of that goes with running back blocking. Some of that goes with offensive line. Some of that goes on your quarterback for missing throws. And we saw that even in the spring game. A completion's not always the same when you have a guy running butt naked wide open, but it's a stop and go to a knee to dive for a ball that's behind him. So, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but that's just a fact of nature. So I don't necessarily think that there needs to be an offensive coordinator. I think that the production can be better. I think that Mark Richt can do better calling plays and organizing everything. I've said for a couple years that I would have loved to have seen Mark Helfrich be the quarterback coach / offensive coordinator, former Oregon coach. I know that he wants to be a head coach again. I know that he's off the table because he's back with his boy Chip Kelly out at UCLA, but I think something like that would have been perfect. But again, you're not having the head coach fire his son, who is a good quarterback coach and has done well in recruiting. And I think he's been in there with the development of the quarterbacks and everything. But when there's other guys with, names and resumes who could have been an upgrade if his last name wasn't Richt and Mark Helfrich was out there, I think that maybe we would have made that move. So I'm not going to say that it needs to happen, but come hell or high water, Mark Richt needs to figure out how to make the offense work a little bit better. Yes.
So a few people on the chat are telling me that I'm too soft or that you're too soft on the offensive coordinator call. I believe that you answered the question. Yes, there's a difference between a need and a want or an upgrade. Could the position be upgraded? I think I'm hearing that, yes, it possibly could be upgraded, but also I would love to do a study. And I thought about doing this. If I had all the time in the world, I would go through Malik Rozier's year and I would watch I would chart every pass that he made. And maybe to size that down, take the 3 games that they lost at the end of the year. So Miami played, in my estimation, one team better than them last year, and that was Clemson. They played a couple other teams that were in the same range of talent and ability. That would be Wisconsin and Florida State, and maybe Virginia Tech and Miami, or Notre Dame. Not Virginia Tech quite. But anyway, there's a range of games there. They lost the 3 at the end. If you take those games, and if you take every throw that Malik Rozier missed, let's first understand that there's no quarterback in the nation that's going to hit every throw. But if you take that, what he miss per game on those games that they lost at the end? What he miss? Maybe 6 to 10 throws each game. And your really good quarterback, like a top 10 in the nation quarterback, maybe hits 70 or 80% of those. So he only misses 2 or 3 instead of 6 or 10. And obviously that extends drives, that makes big plays, that makes some of those down to the knee and reaching behind you plays, a 50-yard TD for some of the speed weapons that you have on the outside. Yeah, it completely changes the complexion of the game. And then maybe we're not talking about offensive coordinator because you hung up a 45-28 win against Wisconsin, or you hung within a touchdown of Clemson, or you beat Pitt like you were supposed to, and you're sitting at 12-1, and you won the Orange Bowl and finished in the top 5 in the country. So maybe people aren't clamoring for an offensive coordinator if instead of missing 6 to 10 throws against the big teams, you miss 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I think that, Malik Rozier hit 41% in his last 3 games, total completions. So, that's, not going to be good enough. But as I'm looking back through, in 2013, Miami was 11th in yards per play nationally. Again, in 14, 11th. In 2015, I think that was the aberration that was like down near 50. 48th. And then the last 2 years have been top 25 in yards per play. So I think that, there has been production there. I agree with what Mark said as the synopsis of my response. Could there be upgrade to offensive coordinator? Yes. Is it the most pressing need and like an imminent, like I got to do it right now, like a tier 1 action item? It's not. And that's just how I feel about
it. So, Cam, we're talking about an elite program that's not playing quite elite, but we see the steps being made each and every year. So if you take out quarterback, what do you think was the difference between Miami and Clemson in the ACC championship game, besides Rozier not being a top 10 quarterback in the nation, being a top 40 or 50 quarterback in the nation?
Depth. I mean, yeah, Clemson is way deeper than Miami is right now. I mean, they got so many 4-star and 5-star guys all over the place, and their defensive line, who I said Miami was comparable with, they proved me wrong because that was the best defensive line in football last year. That was ridiculous. So overall, just the depth, and then the game plan for that game. They executed it perfectly. So they knew, okay, Miami's going to try to take away the run game with all the running backs that we have and Kelly Bryant. And so they're going to make us beat them by throwing. And they schemed up ways to put lipstick on a pig because Kelly Bryant's really not that good, to be perfectly honest, as a passing quarterback. But again, just like against Virginia, just like against a couple other teams, we made him look like a Heisman Trophy candidate because they saw what the game plan was going to be, and they attacked that with flawless precision. So yeah, just the execution of the game plan and their depth overall. Those are two things that really stood out to me as being different. But I mean, it's 14-0 at the time, and we go to a double move to Jeff Thomas, and he's wide open, and Malik Rozier misses him. And I mean, that's a 75-yard touchdown. Cue up the band. It's 14-7. We're in the ball game in the second quarter, and you can't miss that throw. I'm sorry. Like, you got one of the most electric playmakers in America, and that happens. And then it kind of spiraled out of control. But yeah, I mean, depth and the execution of that game plan, those were the things that really stood out to me as being spectacular in favor of Clemson on that day.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you love the game that we both love, college football, or if you're just zeroed in on Miami. I have a ton of contributors, and Cam is at the top of the list, definitely, with the insight and information that he provides, and tons of good storytelling as well from Cam on a regular basis. Please join him and the rest of the crew at State of the U. I had a couple of specific recruiting questions within the chat, but I'll let you cut loose before I can weed through and find those. What do we have on the latest on the recruiting path?
Okay. In general, there was some momentum that Miami had that seemed to be waning because there were no commitments or things like that. It kind of just seemed to stagnate. 4-star All-American linebacker Anthony Solomon from St. Thomas Aquinas recently committed. This is after Miami dropped a former commitment from Diamante Howard from Miami Southridge, who's a first cousin of Sean Taylor, the late great Sean Taylor, I should say. But he hasn't developed physically, and he's kind of average as a player, honestly. He's more of a mid-tier, your Kentucky, your Cincinnati level recruit, not like a Miami level recruit. So we let him seek shelter elsewhere. There was another wide receiver recruit who's very good, Breon Fuller. He's a 4-star, but again, being very selective based on numbers, we let him seek shelter elsewhere, and he'll be fine. He'll be at a top-tier Power 5 school. And then we lost an offensive lineman commit from Brandon Cunningham from Mississippi, Ocean Springs, Mississippi, because he wants to stay closer to home like most people do. So he committed then immediately to Mississippi State, which is very close to his home and his family and things like that. So Solomon committed. And then just on Saturday at the last spring scrimmage on the 21st, Miami got a commitment from Bellevue 4-star tackle Michael Tarquin, who's very, very good. He's 6'5", he's 290 pounds. He's a road grader on the running game. He's a capable pass blocker, but obviously that's the area where all offensive linemen need to progress, because you're going to see a combination of size and speed at the next level that you probably don't see at the high school level. So things are going in a decent direction. Miami has, I think, 11 commits in the 2019 class right now. Still looking for a quarterback, still looking for a second running back, still looking for a second wide receiver, because our number one target from Homestead, South Dade, his name is Frank Ladson. He just committed to Clemson the other day. But his recruitment was always Clemson, and I'll go to Miami, but prove to me why not Clemson. That's where his recruitment started from, because they've been putting people in the league at his position at a very high rate, and the top tier guys pretty much always go in the first or second round. So I don't fault him. I think that I would have liked to see him come to Miami, but there's a time horizon still available for Miami to recover, not necessarily with Ladson, but with others. And there's a wealth of numbers at the position where this doesn't hurt as badly as missing on Tyson Campbell and Patrick Surtain Jr. on signing day last year. because you put all your eggs in that basket and then that didn't come through. When discussing that on Twitter, I might have been a little bit too passive on my conversation with that. But don't get it wrong, I want Frank Ladson on the team, and it is a miss absolutely to have him not be on the team. But I think that Miami can recover well. Not necessarily saying that you're going to replace Frank Ladson with a Frank Ladson peer level player. He's 6'4", 175 pounds and can fly. Like, you're not going to find many of those guys just walking around, but I think it'll be okay. So I think that's where we are, and just trying to really move forward and press forward with some new commitments. And I guess I'll take the questions now.
Yeah, so Ladson was asked about Stevenson, Kevin Harris. Any chance to flip Akeem Dent?
Kevin Harris from Grayson, Loganville, Grayson, Georgia. He was down on his official visit last weekend, which is notable because Mark Richt long said from the time that they put in this new rule for spring official visits, he said, Miami, we're not doing spring official visits. We're only doing fall official visits. So if you want to commit early, come down for an unofficial on your dime and then come back in the fall when we're playing football, but we're not doing that. And then they went and they made an exception. Now, I don't know necessarily why they made an exception, and hopefully that doesn't lead to a wholesale change in paradigm. But Kevin Harris's final three, I think, were Alabama, Georgia, and Miami. So, or Alabama, LSU, and Miami. Some combination of two powerhouse LSU or SEC teams and then the Hurricanes. So I think it makes sense to bring him in if he really wanted to look at Miami before he made a commitment, which he seemed to. Excuse me. So I think that there's a puncher's chance at least, and we'll see what happens there. The other one was Tyreek Stevenson, who was Frank Ladson's teammate at Southgate, who was transferred to Miami Southridge, which gave Miami several recruits last year, being DeLon Scaife, an early enrollee, D. Wiggins from there as a wide receiver, early enrollee, and then Mark Pope, who's the best wide receiver in Florida last year, who's not going to enroll early, but he'll be here in the summertime. So he's following at that. He's going to that powerhouse program. Stevenson, he's really good. He's 6 feet, 190, 195 pounds. He can play corner. He can play safety. He's a baller in the secondary. So everybody in America is going to want him, and Miami is going to have to fight to keep him. But at the beginning of the evaluation period, which is now, because on today, actually, high school football teams are starting their spring practices around the state of Florida. As we sit here today, Miami's in a very good place with Stevenson. I'm not saying that they're leading. I'm not saying that a commitment is imminent, but he's in a very good place. Lastly, it was asked about Akeem Dent. Akeem Dent is going to Florida State. His brother walked on to Florida State, even had a nice catch, I heard or read, in the spring game for them because he's a wide receiver walk-on up there. Yeah, I mean, absent from, the bag man showing up, and perennial shout out to Stephen Godfrey from SB Nation. Look up his article, 2014, I think it was, called Meet the Bag Man. If you want to, it's with anonymous sourcing, but he went to, Godfrey went to Ole Miss himself and has been embedded in the SEC world for a while. And he met with a lot of boosters who are bagmen, i.e. I have a bag of cash and I'm going to give it to this recruit. That's that bag man. If you want a little bit behind the scenes or inside baseball of how recruiting works, definitely go read that piece. But absent there being a lot of Miami bagmen with a lot of bags and a lot of money for Akeem Dent, he's going to Florida State because his brother is going there, and that's what it is. And he was Akeem Dent is on his third commitment because he was committed somewhere before Miami, then he committed to Miami, and then he's now at Florida or committed to Florida State. So, I think that around that third or fourth commitment for kids like that, they're going to stick, but especially in that his brother's up there in Tallahassee, that's where he's going to go.
Cam Underwood, State of the U, joining us on a regular basis to talk Miami football. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you like the audio versions better, then check out Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, and Podbean. Just search Mark Rogers TV, where we talk to the best bloggers and broadcasters in the industry about college football. And I will soon be unveiling my scheduling series where I fix scheduling in college football. So, Cam, looking at the ACC in particular, and I'm not going to bog down the Miami conversation here with this, but I just don't see it reasonable that two teams in the same division that are fighting and directly in competition for a division championship, as we know, they play every one in the same division, but you only play 2 teams in the other division. So, for example, there are teams in the ACC this year that are playing 2 teams in the other division that went a combined 4-12. And there are other teams in the same division playing 2 teams on the opposite side that went 12-4 last year. That does not seem like it's so. What I was able to do is go through, maintain the traditions of the rivalries, i.e., Florida State, Miami, and balance out the scheduling.
That's interesting, and it's Miami, Florida State, by the way, because winners come first. Yeah, I've seen a couple of people do similar kind of things with pods and different kind of looks at how to make things equal. If you look back in your Miami Hurricanes fan, which you are if you're watching this, and hey, let's go Canes. But in 2015. Let me see, 16, 17. Yeah, so 2015, when Brad Kaya got that concussion against Clemson, and they beat us by the worst score ever in the history of Miami Hurricanes football. The 2 teams we played from the other division that year were Clemson and Florida State, where Virginia Tech, they played Wake Forest and whoever, like Wake Forest and Louisville. And I'm sure, okay, Louisville's a nice little squad, and Wake Forest, they were a plucky little upstart, outfit then, but like, dude, like, come on, like it's not the same. So it would be interesting to see your take on things. But yeah, there have been a lot of people who've taken a bite of that apple. I'm not one of them because that's just not necessarily I like looking at the recruiting side of things and some other things. But, scheduling does matter because you can only win the games that are on your schedule, and having schedules that are at least on some level equitable, especially in conference, that makes a difference. I know that everybody is not playing in LSU non-conference in the ACC or in our division. Excuse me, Virginia Tech, they played Tennessee last year, but Tennessee was a tire fire, so or the last 2 years, so who cares? Kind of a thing. Clemson's playing Auburn. Hey, now, we're talking about Clemson, Auburn, home, and then, Miami, LSU, and, Florida State, Alabama. Like, there were some teams who were playing at a different caliber, but then again, there's our teams, the teams that I've mentioned, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, are on a different level than your Georgia Tech, than your, Wake Forest, than, whoever, your Virginia even, because they're a great academic institution, but not really a good football team. So they're not going to be able to schedule some of these huge marquee games. But, in the conference, I think that there are ways to make it equitable. And I think that that's a conversation that should continue to be had because, you don't want to run into something where, if Miami had a great shot at a championship or something in 2015, look, you're going up against 2 of the 10-5 best teams in America from the other division that nobody else has to deal with. It's not necessarily fair, but hey, life isn't fair. Get over it and win.
There was a season a couple of years ago in the SEC, and this is when LSU was LSU and they were as good as Alabama. This was about 5 years ago, where the 2 teams that LSU played out of the SEC Eastern Division went 14-2 the year before. The 2 teams that Alabama played went 2-14 the year before. So how do you conceivably compete for a championship when you have that much imbalance in scheduling, when 2 teams are playing each other, then they're playing 5 other games that are exactly the same. So there's only 2 games out of the 8 that are different, but you've got to play 2 teams that went 14-2. I'm going to play 2 teams that went 2-14 last year.
Yeah, but Miami lost to Pittsburgh last year, so you can't count any win. Any given Saturday, I guess. So, but it is interesting conversation fodder, definitely. So that'll be interesting to see.
I'm also taking the out-of-conference scheduling out of the hands of the schools and placing it in the hands of my college football committee that will be in charge of scheduling and will even out the scheduling out of conference as well. But that's an explanation for another time.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know about that. I would have to say, and without going too deep into that, I think that maybe that would be good for those teams that think themselves to be championship contenders. Like those top 15, 20 teams. Like, yeah, let's keep that in this group, or something like that for the most part. But, you're going to have teams with different aims. You're going to have a Kentucky. Look, I'm trying to get to 8 wins. I don't care if I'm playing, Clemson home for the opener. That's not where we're at. So for some teams, yeah, if you have that upward mobility or that vision of that, then sure. But the other teams, it's no skin off my back. You guys continue doing things the way you've been doing because, at the end of the day, you're going to lose to some of these better teams anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
So just to use Miami for an example, this is what I would do. You go to a 9-game schedule, first of all, because everybody's got to play the same number of conference games. So all the Power Fives goes to a 9-game schedule. So that's going to help me in terms of making the conference scheduling equitable. So now you've got 3 non-conference games. Okay, Miami, go play any Group of 5 or FCF school. You have control over one of those 3 games. I'm going to schedule, as the college football committee, the other 2 games for you. And that 2-game season of non-conference games is going to equal a composite 500 record from the year before. So if we match you up against Michigan, who went 8-4 last year, we're going to go find you a 4-8 team, and everyone is going to play a 500 composite non-conference schedule.
I mean, that works on numbers. I see that. I mean, obviously you have styles that come into play, with your Air Force / Georgia Tech / Navy, triple option, wishbone, flexbone, whatever you want to call it. Well, I mean, wishbone and flexbone are different. Yeah, whatever. He's above me, but you know what I mean. So that's another, consideration, because that can be, in those instances, the scheme can be the challenging factor. So, I don't think that any scheduling metric is going to be perfect, but I think that that's a step in the right direction.
All right, we got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U to talk Miami football with you, and we're taking all sorts of comments and questions. The thing that I wanted to hit on as well before we let you go, because Thursday night is day 1 of the NFL draft. I saw an article on your site concerning Mark Walton, saw another article concerning some of the top steals in the history of the U in placing players in the NFL draft who turned out to be steals. Your thoughts about what you've heard recently, who may be the movers and shakers? I know Mark Walton, it seems like he hasn't been with the program forever, just because, unfortunately, he was hurt so early last season. But your thoughts about the Canes entering the NFL draft this weekend?
Yeah, man, we got a lot of good stuff up on the website. I'm not the NFL guy. Matt Washington, shout out to him on State of the U. He's our NFL guru who really does all that stuff. So we're going to have draft profiles up for every single player. I've seen them already scheduled for the next 2 days for the last 2 guys that need to get up there. Justin Tatavio, another one of our ace contributors, he put up the piece about guys being steals in the draft. And then NFL.com, what they did is they went down and they ranked the best player to be picked at every slot in the first round. And 7 of the 32 were Miami Hurricanes. So the best number 5 pick ever, the best number 12, like they went down and said, who's the best number 1, best number whatever. And 7 of the 32 who were the best at their draft slot were Miami Hurricanes, which is pretty awesome. So you have that long history of success in the league coming from Miami. Even guys like Anthony Chickalo, who wasn't necessarily drafted highly, was a high recruit or a highly ranked recruit, excuse me, when he came into Miami, and now he's doing very well in the league. So, you're going to have a lot of those guys. I think the guys that are really going to elevate or have elevated through this process are going to be Mark Walton, because he's going to be healthy. And he's, worked out and he's interviewing and all these kind of things. He's very, very good. People I see retweeting or videos and things where draft analysts and, people, even beat writers who cover teams, are like, wait, look at this run and look at this pass pro and look at this catch and look at all these kind of things from Mark Walton. Like, why are we not talking about him more? It was like, because he is a 4'6", 40 guy, so he's quicker than he is fast. He's 5'9", about 208 pounds, so he's not doesn't have elite measurements, but he produces, so, and he was injured, like those 3 things. That's probably why not. In addition, Chad Thomas, defensive end, he's going to be a guy who's going to be drafted, probably in the 2nd or 3rd round. And I saw another article about teams maybe being wary of Chad Thomas because of his interest and talent in music. Because if you don't know, he's like a very talented producer. He had a track that he produced for Rick Ross on Rick Ross's last album. The first track was Apple of My Eye. Which is pretty dope, because who does that kind of stuff, but people are looking at his interest in music as being a negative than a positive. And about a year ago, about 13 months ago now, I wrote a piece about Chad Thomas and the perception of music, because full disclosure, I've been performing musician for damn near 30 years. I have a degree in music education. I've traveled all over the world. I've performed all these kind of things. I've had people say the same kind of things about me back in the past when I was a aspiring athlete. Same thing that they were saying about Chad Thomas, like, oh, you got to miss because of choir practice, or you got to do, play piano, this recital or whatever, so you can't come to this extra thing, not missing games or practices, but just on the side, because one of the academic pursuits that I was interested in and very talented in was music. And I kind of railed against that perception, because if it were anything other than music, it would be great that Chad Thomas did it. I mean, Matt Walters was a fifth-year physics grad student when Miami won the 2001 national championship. Everybody talked about that in all these glowing terms. You have guys who do poetry. You have guys who, paint, Honey Jones and whatnot, who do, painting. Oh, that's great. Like, I wrote this, literature. I did, any other thing than music would be great. And I just think that that's crap. So Bleacher Report wrote a similar article. They have, they interviewed Chad about it and some of the other people in the music industry that I did not do for my opinion piece last year, but I think it was in the same vein. So that was pretty cool. So look that up on Bleacher Report. Also look that up on State of the U on Chad Thomas and the perception of music. But the perception of football, he's going to be drafted very highly. Also as well, the last guy, Christopher Herndon IV, the tight end, who was a senior this past year, also missed the last couple of games with an injury, which was an unfortunate theme at the end of Miami's season, where top-level guys ended up missing time. Christopher Herndon is going to make himself some money in the NFL. He's going to be another third, maybe fourth-round draft pick, kind of maybe a little bit behind Chad Thomas in that regard. But I think that those three guys are really going to be solid players. I think that they're going to get drafted, fairly highly in the top 4 rounds probably. And make themselves some money. So those are the guys I'm really looking at. But I'm excited for all the future pro canes, your Braxton Berrios, your D. Delaney, your Kendrick Norton, your RJ McIntosh, your Trevor Darling, Casey McDermott, Michael Badgley. I hope I didn't forget anybody off that list. But all the guys who I mentioned, the top 3 and all those guys, we're excited to see what happens. I don't think that anybody elevates themselves into the conversation for the first round on Thursday, but that second day pick, the second, third round, I think it was on Friday. Though you might hear a couple names, but I think that most everybody should get picked. Maybe a couple exceptions, but I think that I know for a fact we're going to have some great graphics from Mike Meredith on the site and on social. I know that Matt Washington's writing some great pieces on profiles. He's also going to have a quick hitter on where those guys are going to get drafted and what it might look like for them in their NFL cities and a bunch of other stuff. So, be sure that you check out State of the U. We try to do have comprehensive coverage for Miami Hurricanes athletics, basketball, baseball, and football, and also recruiting. And speaking of recruiting, I'm recruiting new writers right now. I can't show you my list because it's over there on the coffee table. But yeah, I'm looking at it, bringing in a whole bunch of people so we can keep this show rolling. So we have great stuff for you guys. So I appreciate the support and stick with us. But we're going to have more great stuff for you in the future. Just believe me.
Yeah, appreciate all the comments and questions coming in. Weren't able to get to all the topics, but tried to gather up the main ones.
You know what? Let's go rapid fire. Give me like 3 or 4 more, because okay. We're here for the people. So
all right. So this one out of nowhere, but still, and this is a lot of speculation, but people always love to hear this. Is Mark Richt on the hot seat without a good season?
No. Next question.
Okay. All right. Offensive line, got to get better there.
True. Next question.
Are we ready for LSU, or is LSU ready for us? I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting thing. And, being in a network, we are collaborating with our LSU blog about a little bit of, behind the curtain for both sides of that question. So be sure you're on the lookout for that on State of the U in upcoming days. But, I think that we're really going to focus on ourselves. And if we get the offensive line where it needs to be, I think that we'll be all right. I think that LSU's talent base on their roster has come down as ours is increasing. So I think that it's going to be a good matchup. Grant Delpit, one of their star safeties, I saw he hurt his shoulder in their spring game. He's going to have surgery on that. Don't know if he's going to be available for that starting game. So I think there's going to be a close game anyway. I think that the early line was Miami favored by 1 point at the beginning of spring. So I think that both teams are going to be ready for this. They're going to be ready to put on a good show. Hopefully LSU will. For them, they are hopeful that they will do that. I am not hopeful for anything for LSU. They can lose 1,000,000-0 for all I care for what they did to us the last time that we played in the Peach Bowl, and then also, just for the ghost of Warren Morris from the 1996 College World Series and everything. But, I think that they're working to be ready. I think that Miami's working to be ready, and I think it's going to be a really good show.
And then somebody's commenting here that quarterback recruits are being turned away, or would be discouraged by there not being a better play caller in place at offensive coordinator.
If that is what it is, then it is what it is. But, you know, recruits were turned away when Miami was losing games as well. So there's always going to be some kind of a negative. And Miami is actually in the battle for one of the best quarterbacks this year in Michael Johnson Jr., whose dad coaches at Oregon. But, you know, that's just the kind of thing you have to work with, but also as Mark Richt is developing as a play caller, because he does have to relearn how to call plays and also who he's working with. I think that you're seeing that he's tailoring the offense to the talent that he has, and I think that can be a positive.
All right. He is Cam Underwood of State of the U. The insight, the information, the knowledge, the breakdown, and the storytelling speaks for itself. Please join him at State of the U for the finest in Miami football coverage and sports overall. Mark Rogers, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, because this is how I think about it. I've got a voice. I bring on the best media contributors I can find. They've got a voice, and I give you a voice as well with your comments and questions. So if you like what you hear, please leave a comment, like the videos, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for the very best in college football coverage. Cam, we appreciate you diving in here and really digging in for an hour.
Yeah, man, it was fun, you know. So I know it's a little bit of a new background. I moved to a different house. So eventually there's going to be like a canvas painting behind me or something. Or if I decide to do a wall of shoes a la Bomani Jones, then I'll have all my J's and everything behind me. But it was good to spend some time with you guys and get back on here and everything to just take a second away from, you know, moving boxes and setting things up with them going back to over there. But yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, you know, if you keep the background the same, Cam, people just think that we're like sitting on opposite ends of the room talking to each other.
I know, right? It's just like y'all could have sat on the same screen. No. Like, he lives in Connecticut. I live in South Florida. Like, I guarantee you that, like, I'm touching this wall and it's not the same place. But yeah, no, definitely. But like I said, it was good to be on here and appreciate the combo.
All right, Cam, we'll see you soon.
All right, see you guys.